A couple weeks ago, we were talking about McCoy and how much he had left in the tank. It seems to me there's like a bigger picture league-wide with these running backs and what to do with them because they age out so quickly that they need to get paid earlier. Ezekiel Elliott's talking about a holdout. You view this position so much differently than every other part of the football team now, don't you?
Yeah, I think I always say you need a running game. You don't necessarily always need a running back. But what are you going to do if you're Dallas and you've made that commitment? He is an exceptional player. But then again, we thought Todd Gurley was, and he's banged up early, and nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. The Bills have been an exception in a way. They still have a guy who is thought of in those cases with McCoy has been an exceptional player, but he hasn't done that in the last year and a half on the field. I was looking at the cap numbers. The Bills have been in the top 5 in cap number for running back position ever since McCoy's been there. Now, next year, if you look at next year, that number drops way down. Surprisingly, New England, I was looking at the cap numbers, has been in the top 6 for running back position percentage of the cap over the last 5 years. But they spread it around. They have a series of guys all making between $2, $3, $4 million. Now, not to be a surprise, but when you have that quarterback, you can make that position work. I think that's the way to do it. You're not as dependent on one guy. But again, if you have an exceptional player who can do so much for your team, I see the reason to do it. But, you know, the Jets are now going to be in that spot. Mm-hmm. They got a ton of money invested in that one guy. If you look at recent history in the league, it isn't the ability, it's the ability to run, not just relying on the one guy.
So, Pat, you run a football team now. How do you view the position? What do you do? How do you invest in it?
Well, I think to go further than Blake said, I don't think you do invest in it anymore because the league has changed more than the position has changed. If you go back and watch football from the late 80s, early 90s, the golden running back years, right? We got Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders and Bo Jackson. I can go on and on and on. Those guys were superior athletic athletes, right? Not to be redundant, but they were better, more athletic than anyone else on the field. Well, defensive coordinators and general managers realized I can go find guys that can play like this to play the other side of the ball. I mean, if you looked at a linebacker and a running back side by side 25 years ago, there was a difference. If you look at a running back and a linebacker today side by side, there isn't much of a difference. They're both as athletic. The only difference is the linebacker could bench 100 pounds more and maybe run faster than that running back can. The way that the game is today, I don't think that you need to pay for a running back. And you brought up the Patriots, spread it around. When a guy like Mike Gillislee can be your feature back for 3 weeks and then you never hear from him ever again, that says something.
Yeah, but they do spread it around that way, and they have guys who have pretty defined roles, and they find a way to make them effective. Again, that's the entire system, but you don't see them ever investing. You know, they drafted Sony Michel relatively early. He'll be that guy for a few years, but I would be stunned to see him, even if he did well, New England invest in a big contract with him. They'll move on and go to the next guy. They'll use him for the 3-4 years, and they'll move to the next guy.
Greg, it strikes me that some of these guys, maybe all of them, are wasting time in college. I don't know that there's a solution to that, but if you've got that limited a lifespan and you're spending 3 years running the ball for, in the Pac-10.
Yeah, I mean, I think that brings up a good point. I think conference and what type of athlete you see on the other side of the ball will determine how long you can stay in college. If you're in the SEC, you're facing NFL defensive linemen every week, right? I think that, you bring up a good point about the change in the position, and, now you see guys have to be able to catch the ball, consistently out of the backfield. And I think that's a great point about the body type and what you see. And, I just don't, I agree with, both sides of it. I think that you're going to see a different type of athlete. And I think that the schemes and having a running game is probably more important than the actual player.
And the death of the featured back, perhaps.
Yeah.
Could be.